Hi, everyone. I am going to go over what I like to call great Greeks of the day. These are some important Greeks that made some very important contributions to the world. And we know they're important because they're still relevant to our lives today. So hopefully you find this interesting. I think that you will recognize some of, if not the names, then definitely the concepts. I am also doing this. I want to make sure that you know how to pronounce some of these names in case you want to use them for your project. Okay, so in the field of mathematics, Pythagoras was a Greek who invented the Pythagorean theorem. So if you've taken geometry, you probably have seen this or are familiar with the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that's, finding the perimeter of a right triangle. So thank you, Pythagoras. And Euclid was known as the father of geometry. I know there's a math teacher upstairs on the M hallway that has, I think there's a poster of both of these mathematicians, these Greek mathematicians. All right, in the field of poetry or literature, the great Greek is Homer. Homer was a blind storyteller who wandered from village to village reciting famous epic poems. Epic poems are long stories about heroes. So he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, both of which are about wars. Philosophers. We have some great Greek philosophers, and there were three of them. We have a little mnemonic for remembering the order of these philosophers. It is SPA. So Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So Socrates is the original philosopher of Greece. This is where we get this idea of the Socratic method, or we do Socratic seminars in class. It's just about questioning. So Socrates developed a method of questioning. He was actually forced to drink poison. So he was convicted of corrupting the youth of Athens and sentenced to death. But he was a teacher, and he was a teacher of Plato. So you'll see Plato was a student of Socrates, and he wrote about the government and justice in his famous work called The Republic. And then Aristotle, who was the student of Plato, was another philosopher, and he happened to be the teacher of Alexander the Great. So this is how we remember SPA, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Okay. In the field of science, we have medicine. So Hippocrates was a great Greek. He is known as the father of medicine. And doctors today still take what is called the Hippocratic Oath. And it is first, do no harm. So it's essentially an oath stating that they will not harm their patients, that they will do all they can to save their patients. And then Archimedes was an inventor. He made a system of levers and pulleys to lift heavy loads. So you can see there's a little image there at the bottom, and then a screw to lift water. So you would turn it, and then that water would come up that screw. All right, a couple of historians. So first, Herodotus. He was the father of history. So you can remember Herodotus with an H, father of history. And he recorded about the Persian Wars. And then Thucydides was an historian and a general, a war general. And he wrote about the Peloponnesian War. All right. The Greeks also, there were some great writers, some great playwrights. Aeschylus was a playwright and the father of tragedy. A tragedy is a play in which the main character suffers. And then Sophocles was another playwright, and he also wrote tragedies, including Antigone. So these plays were either tragedies, which you can see our two great Greeks were pretty well known for writing tragedies or comedies. Okay, and then the Greeks are also very well known for sculpture and architecture. Phidias was a sculptor, and one of his most famous works is the sculpture of Athena in the Parthenon. So you can see here on the far left, this is some remains of the Parthenon, and then this would have been the gold-plated statue of Athena, the goddess of wisdom that was in the Parthenon. And then columns. Columns are an extremely important contribution from the Greeks. And if you've ever been into Washington, D.C., you have definitely seen columns. They're on many buildings in our nation's capital. So you can see here is a picture of the White House. And then here is a picture, I think this is the Lincoln Memorial, both of which used columns that come from the Greeks. There are 3 types of columns, and you do need to be aware of these different types. We have the Doric column, which is just the very most plain and basic column. The Ionic column is here, and it has what looks like little eyes. And then the Corinthian column, it's the most fancy, and it's kind of floral. I like to remember that since it looks like kind of like flowers and floral, so it's kind of like a carnation. Corinthian carnation. That helps me remember. Okay, so as you can see, we have a lot of Greek contributions in the world today, all around us. And most importantly, I do want to remind you that one of the biggest contributions that we got from the Greeks was the idea of democracy. So the government in the United States is based on this idea of democracy, and it is the Greeks who first established this system of government.